Welcome back. Carmelo Anthony filing to appeal his 35-year prison sentence for the murder of 17-year-old Austin Metcalf at a Frisco track meet. He has the possibility of parole after serving half that sentence. An audible gasp heard inside the courtroom as the sentence was read. Carmelo Anthony, inconsolable, his head hung low, crying. And for the first time since the trial began, Austin's twin brother Hunter walked into the courtroom. He spoke directly to Carmelo Anthony. "I just want some respect if you could look me in the eye." Carmelo looked up. Hunter continued, "I'm trying to learn how to forgive. I'm trying to understand why he had to go. You took away someone who was supposed to be an uncle to my kids." Austin's father also spoke directly to his son's killer. "We were robbed. Don't look down. The public response sickens me, especially when a gag order doesn't allow me to defend my son. This was never about race or politics. But what you did was to choose to make it about both. Grief is not sad, it's rage. A piece of me died with my son. I forgive you, but I do not forgive what you did. You can't even look me in the eye, but you can stab my son in the effing heart." Austin's mother telling Anthony, "You may have just been given a sentence of 35 years behind bars. You can consider yourself lucky because I've been sentenced to a lifetime without my son." Heartbreaking, devastating. This case is tragic. But somehow it also became tribal. Outside the courthouse and online in the comments section, a modern American racial drama played out. Not because everyone saw it that way, but because a group of activists insisted on seeing it that way.
I said, as a former prosecutor, this was a legal lynching that happened in this slaughterhouse. This is a slaughterhouse. This is not a courthouse. This courthouse is designed when you would come here and you look like us to slaughter you. That's what they were. Those twins are domestic racist terrorists.
Illegal lynching, domestic terrorists. That person is a lawyer. My question is, who gave that person a law degree or a bar card? Unfortunately, it gets worse.
They should have both been arrested.
They both should have been dead. Both brothers. Both of them should have been dead. You ask me?
They both should be dead, referencing the twins. This poison extended to the Metcalf parents.
If he was white, we wouldn't even be here today. It would have never came to court. It would have never been no handcuffs. We wouldn't be here today. They said we supposed to know how to act around white people. What the is that? You should have taught your sons to go get a adult like we know how to do.
Friends of the Metcalf family were even followed to their car. So the question is, how far has this reaction spread? It's far enough that Cardi B has a take. She wrote on X, "Wow, just frickin' wow, disgusting. This is not justice, this is trying to make an example." But Cardi B is a moron. The question is, how widespread is this sentiment? Does a significant percentage of Black America see the victim as Carmelo Anthony? We have some evidence. It was really about 50 D-list race hustlers outside the courtroom each day. Their champion was illiterate criminal Dominique Alexander. I mean, this case was so obvious it couldn't even gain the attention of Al Sharpton or Ben Crump. And Ben Crump has never met a race story where he didn't want to be the main character. But this is where the story takes a turn. Because what started outside the courthouse found its way into politics. Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett defended what Carmelo Anthony did.
As a 5'3" woman, if a 300-pound man is beating me, like on top of me and beating me down, I'm not limited to fist. Because I'm telling you right now, if you are twice my weight and got way more strength than me, and you got me pinned down, I don't believe I'm going to survive. You know, I would argue that even the only time we go into things like people's hands being considered deadly weapons is typically like if they're a professional boxer or that kind of stuff. But I think by the time you start getting to like football player, good argument. Good freaking argument.
If a 300-pound man had Jasmine Crockett on the ground beating her, I would defend her use of self-defense, because that's what would be supported by the facts and the evidence. It's not a modern American racial drama where the skin color of the characters is all that matters. It's the facts, the circumstances, and the evidence that matter. But that seems to escape the Congresswoman, who has lectured the Metcalf family about real pain.
Black women, especially Black women who have Black male children, live in fear and agony every single day. A fear and agony that I promise you, the Metcalfs probably never spent a day living that way. And we're going to have just some real conversations about race in this country.
Simply existing as a Black woman in this country is more painful than losing your son to murder. Disgraceful, unethical, unbecoming a member of Congress. It takes a simple majority. Members of Congress, Jasmine Crockett should be censured. Joining me now, prosecutor in the Karmelo Anthony trial, Bill Wirskye, and Collin County District Attorney Greg Willis. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us here today, Mr. District Attorney. I think I'll start with you. Let me get your reaction to the sentencing of Karmelo Anthony. I'm sure you men are relieved and happy with the verdict. How do you feel about the sentence of 35 years?
Well, Will, I'm gratified by it. I think the jury did a great job of listening to the facts, following the law, and ultimately they had to balance sentencing a now 19-year-old, but was 17 when he committed the crime. They had to balance that with the profound, permanent, and unnatural loss of Austin Metcalf to his family.
Bill, during the sentencing phase of this trial, the defense only put on the stand Carmelo Anthony's mother, and the prosecution, you chose, I believe, not to put on any witnesses. Why?
Well, there's a lot of legal strategy that goes into that, Will, so I can't really get into the ins and outs. I can tell you in any criminal trial, especially murder trials, both sides kind of play the hands they're dealt in terms of the cards. But it's not unusual, having done murder cases on both sides for 30 years, to have a punishment phase go that fast in a Texas murder trial.
What has been, I'll go back to you for this one, Greg, what has been the reaction of the community? You're the district attorney in Collin County. What has been the reaction of the community to both the conviction and the sentencing?
I think the local community seems very pleased and happy, and they're glad that it was peacefully resolved and that it was resolved based upon the law and the evidence instead of online clickbaiting and online influencers trying to manipulate people. I think it's a great thing that in America, despite AI, despite all the technology around, that our bedrock principles of a criminal jury trial still survive if we follow the process, and that's what happened here.
Bill, we know what took place outside the courtroom. We know what's been said online. This case has taken on the character of a racial drama. How much, if any of that, made its way into the courtroom?
Absolutely none of it will. In fact, we were very gratified that one of the defense lawyers in their closing statement admitted to the jury this case was never about race, because that was our position from day one. And I know we didn't have cameras in the courtroom because of the age of many of the witnesses, but I want your viewers to know, and the public, we called about 17 eyewitnesses, and it was a very diverse group of young men and women that came into court to testify. And the jury that saw that quickly realized this case was never about race. This case was about murder, plain and simple.
Bill, there's been a lot of misinformation. There's been people suggesting it was an all-white jury. It was not. We know the facts, an all-white jury. But your critics will say, well, there were no black jurors. Tell me about the jury selection process.
Well, we started out with 500 jurors, Will. That was whittled down based on specific answers and questionnaires to about 250. And then we talked to those 250. One thing I can assure you and your viewers, the jury that tried this case and found him guilty and set the sentence was a very diverse jury that accurately reflected a cross-section of our community here in Collin County.
Greg, it was just announced just a few roughly half hour ago that Karmelo Anthony has filed his notice for appeal. What's your reaction?
I would say it's expected. I mean, this is very typical, especially in murder cases, but any case where the defendant gets a lengthy sentence, it's normal for a notice to appeal to be filed. So it would be more surprising if there had not been a notice filed.
Well, on the note of surprise, Bill, were you surprised, or because it is so common, did you expect not to hear from Karmelo Anthony, that the defense chose not to put Karmelo Anthony on the stand?
Well, in many criminal cases, we never hear from the defendant. The prosecutor in me, of course, wants to ask questions, wants to cross-examine. And a lot of times in self-defense cases, the conventional wisdom is you're not going to win on self-defense unless you call your client. So I was hoping he would take the stand. I was hoping jurors in our community would get to hear whatever story he chose to tell. But, you know, ultimately it's his decision under our Constitution, and we have to respect that. And as frustrating though it may be, you know, we had to live with it.
Bill, what would have been your main question that you would have wanted to ask Karmelo Anthony on cross-examination?
Very simple, Will. Why did you take a knife to a track meet?
That fact that he took the knife to the track meet, what does that answer tell you?
It tells me that when he went out and provoked this difficulty, this confrontation with Austin Metcalf, you know, he had a secret no one else knew. He had a knife hidden. He was obviously prepared to use it. And no doubt, I told the jury that it probably empowered him. He knew that any confrontation he provoked, he was going to come out on top because he had a knife in violation of school policy. So I really do think it's important to know why he took the knife. But once we figured out he had the knife, obviously nothing good was going to happen. And Austin Metcalf lost his life because of it.
Bill, what was the most powerful moment in the trial? Was there a moment or a piece of evidence that swung this decision?
I got to tell you, Will, there was so much, and we were so happy to finally get to be able to share it with our jury. The videotape made it very clear. Karmelo Anthony was not surrounded. The kids were minding their own business, looking at their phones under that tent. And then the jury heard from numerous eyewitnesses that corroborated exactly what the video showed. And then finally, and I argued to the jury, the defendant's own words, Karmelo Anthony's own words were super important. He didn't say, they touched me, I was scared of them, they were following me, they surrounded me. What he said repeatedly was, he touched me, he did this, he did that. And so it was obviously a one-on-one confrontation between he and Austin Metcalf.
And then, Greg, finally, the moment when you hear the victim impact statements, when you hear from Hunter and you hear from Austin's parents.
Well, I mean, it's heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. For them to try to put into words the loss that they've experienced, it's just heartbreaking. That was my feeling.
Yeah. Well, Greg Willis, Bill Wirskye, thank you so much for joining us the day after this trial. We appreciate the insight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right.